The boy was crying. Not quiet, dignified crying. Full, heaving sobs, hands shaking, knees buckling, desperate to run. And hiding somewhere inside that trembling kid was the most dangerous sorcerer in the history of civilization. 400 years before any of this happened, humanity was at its peak. Cities gleaming, progress on every front. But underneath all that prosperity, human hearts rotted with deceit and hatred. And that darkness grew until it became something alive. It looked at humanity, judged it, and decided the time for punishment had arrived. The force that humans themselves had created turned back on them and began driving the entire species toward extinction. Continents cracked, the sky went black, the end was seconds away. Then a pillar of white light erupted from the earth. A massive being with colossal wings descended alongside a warrior gripping a great sword. These two recognized the darkness as their common enemy and charged into a battle that literally reshaped the world. Land masses sank into the ocean. Millions perished in the tremors. But when the dust settled, the dragon had won, and the darkness was pushed back. Centuries passed. The legend faded. The names and faces blurred until almost no one remembered the truth behind that ancient war. 400 years later, in the kingdom of Metallicana, something terrible is already happening. A dark-cloaked figure named Osborne rides at the head of a monster army, laughing as he announces that this kingdom is already his. The guards scramble to hold the city walls while their king, their knights, and their high priest are all absent. It goes badly. The gate buckles and splits. Osborne rides forward on horseback and commands his creatures to trample whatever remains of the defense. Inside the castle, a group of soldiers rushes to the church where Princess Sheila waits alongside ministers and attendants. An elder tries to calm her, assures her she is safe here, begs her to wait just a little longer. Sheila asks who the invaders are. The elder explains they call themselves the Dark Rebel Army, followers of an ancient evil sorcerer the world thought was already dead. In another corner of the castle, a boy named Lucian is falling apart. Not pretending to be scared, genuinely, completely crumbling, tears streaming, legs refusing to cooperate. A large soldier grabs him and yells. That is when a red-haired girl named Yoko appears. She looks at Lucian, pulls out her handkerchief, and wipes his face. Not with pity, with impatience. She calls him a coward and tells him to stop crying. Lucian thanks her and promises to wash the handkerchief. She reaches for it. He runs. She chases after him, calling his name. In the church, the soldiers report the enemy is closing in fast. Yoko holds the trembling Lucian and remembers a conversation she had never wanted to think about. Her father, High Priest Gonoto, had once sat her down and explained a secret spell with a very serious face. This spell had the power to release a being sealed inside a living person by divine force. She was never to use it unless her father was absent and the kingdom truly faced destruction. Because what lay sealed inside Lucian was not just a personality. It was the reincarnated soul of the ancient dark sorcerer, Schneider the Dark. And to activate the spell, it required a maiden's kiss. Her father had been extremely specific about that last part. She had thought the entire story was ridiculous. Standing in the chaos of the church now, Yoko still thinks it sounds absurd. Lucian tries to slip away and walks straight into that same large soldier. The man grabs him and calls him worthless. Yoko steps between them and introduces herself as Lucian's guardian. She wheels around and scolds Lucian for crying over a threat, asking whether he is even a boy. He quietly says he is not angry. She looks at him for a moment, remembers a flash of his face covered in food, laughing, and wonders if his gentleness is a kind of strength no one has thought to recognize. The soldiers announce the enemy has broken through the final gate. Princess Sheila appears pale but composed. Lucian presses himself behind Yoko. Yoko admits she is scared too, and then steps in front of the princess and introduces herself. Sheila kneels and says she has heard of a legendary sorcerer sealed somewhere within the kingdom. She begs Yoko to release that power right now. Yoko panics. The idea of the spell, the kiss, the promise she made her father, it is all far too embarrassing. She refuses. And then the church doors explode inward. Osborne strides through with a wide grin, spots Sheila, and announces he will finish her immediately. Yoko spreads her arms to shield the princess and tells him she will not allow it. At that moment, the ministers standing beside Sheila turn and begin begging Osborne for their lives. They had sold the kingdom out, leaked the attack plan, arranged the surprise assault. The loyal old minister staggers in disbelief. Osborne thanks the traitors warmly, and two enormous giants immediately smash them flat with their clubs. He orders the giants to kill everyone else in the room. Lucian screams a warning as a club swings toward Yoko. She shoves him out of the way and they both hit the floor hard. Lucian is bleeding from his head. Yoko looks at the carnage, soldiers cut down, Lucian injured, Osborne laughing. And something inside her shifts. She kneels beside Lucian. She tells him she knows he is scared and that she is terrified too. This is her first time doing something like this, but she accepts it. She begins to chant, in the name of the goddess Enomata, asking for the seal to open, and she leans down and kisses him. The reaction is immediate and violent. Dark energy erupts from Lucian's body in a wave that throws everyone back. Sheila, Osborne, the giants. The energy coils around the boy and reshapes him. When the light fades, a tall, muscular man with long white hair stands where a child just was. He rolls his shoulders, looks at his hands, and laughs. Dark Schneider is back. He announces his resurrection with theatrical fury, furious at the high priest who imprisoned him inside a child, and swears he will kill the old man. Osborne, deeply confused, orders both golems to attack at once. Schneider tells him to shut up, and with a single explosive spell, both golems are instantly reduced to craters. Osborne goes pale. That was one of the most advanced spells in existence. He does not even have time to finish processing that before Schneider has already appeared behind him without anyone noticing. Yoko hesitantly asks if this is really Lucian. Schneider confirms they share one soul. He and Lucian are the same, and since she woke him, he creates a cloak from thin air with a casual gesture. Yoko asks if Lucian is truly gone, if this is really the ancient evil sorcerer her father warned her about. Schneider confirms it. He is Schneider the Dark, reincarnated. And also Lucian, her friend. Sheila whispers the name. She remembers. Her father once told her about a war 15 years ago that started with this very man and tore across the entire continent. Prince Lars, her own brother, went to fight him and died. The man standing in the ruined church right now is the reason her family is missing a member. The loyal old minister immediately begs Schneider to fight for them. Schneider turns away and says he does not want to. The ministers panic. Yoko steps forward and plants herself in front of him, unloading everything she thinks of him. Cheap, cold-blooded, cruel, a selfish monster in a handsome suit. She asks if that is really who he is. Schneider holds his head like her words are physically painful. He mutters that he is done for, that he is not her friend. Then he gives in. Fine, He owes her. He will save them. Yoko cheers and hugs him tight. Osborne is not amused. He begins chanting, pulling lightning from the sky in a massive surge, the spell called Bolt, and it slams directly into Dark Schneider. He just stands there, absorbing the entire blast, and remarks that this kind of attack only polishes him. Osborne screams and unleashes everything he has. Schneider has already vanished from the spot and reappeared behind him without making a sound. He catches Osborne's spiked mace mid-swing, tells him not to scratch a face this perfect, and begins chanting. An enormous column of fire engulfs Osborne completely. He burns. The soldiers cheer. The princess finally exhales. Afterward, Sheila tries to thank Schneider. He walks right past her without acknowledging her existence. Yoko scolds him for ignoring royalty. He pulls Yoko close and asks if she personally has anything to say. She stammers out a thank you. He scoffs. Is that all? And she shoves his hand away. He walks out of the church and into the open air. She runs after him. He says he has things to do. First, get revenge on her father for sealing him. Then start a war and conquer the entire world. Yoko looks at him in horror. He tells her he will spare her. He presses his hand to her cheek. Her heart starts racing and she immediately suspects magic. He denies it, his expression perfectly casual. Then he looks her in the eyes and says, in a voice barely above a whisper, that he hates her and she is always ordering him around. Then he kisses her. When he lets go, Yoko stands frozen. A ring of magical light coils around Schneider. He realizes what is happening 1 second too late, and screams as his body shrinks and reshapes back into the boy Lucian, who wakes up, disoriented, and immediately asks where the monsters went. Yoko tells him they went somewhere else. He cheers, announces he is hungry, and asks if she wants to go home together. She smiles and says yes. Far away in the kingdom of Judas, a white-haired man on horseback receives a report. Osborne's army, centuries in the making, has been completely destroyed in a single engagement. Whoever did it used the venom spell. The man mutters that this is impossible. Venom died with Schneider the Dark 15 years ago. The man's name is Gar, one of the 4 heavenly kings. He dispatches the Hydra summoner Kavaju to Metallicana at once to confirm the sorcerer's identity, with a quiet understanding that if this is truly who he thinks it is, he will deal with it personally. Back at the castle, storm clouds gather over a distant horizon. High Priest Gio rushes Yoko and Lucian to the throne room. A soldier bursts in. Judas Castle has fallen, the king dead. An army of monsters advancing on Metallicana. Gio explains that these clouds signal the awakening of the evil god Anthrax, a god that was sealed away after the Great War and whose seal has now been broken for the first time. Deep underground, a sorcerer named Abigail kneels before a pulsing dark altar, feeling the god's heartbeat, and begins planning his next move. The second seal is in Metallicana, and he means to take it. The ministers beg Yoko to summon Schneider again. She refuses flatly. She will not use Lucian as a tool. That night she tosses and turns, torn between the nightmare images she cannot shake and the strange ache she cannot name. Lucian tries to comfort her. He transforms into cat ears and a tail, makes her laugh, promises he will never become Schneider again. She almost believes him. Then Gar breaks into her room. He moves through the window without a sound, restrains Yoko before she can react, and binds her hands. He interrogates her in a calm, methodical voice, asking how to undo the seal on Dark Schneider. When she refuses to answer, he begins tearing at her nightgown. At that precise moment, Lucian, asleep in the same room, suddenly sits up. But the voice that comes out of him is not Lucian's. It is deep and commanding and furious. He tells Gar to stop, that she is his woman. Gar freezes. He recognizes the voice immediately and stares at the boy in shock. Schneider, controlling Lucian's body, explains that the seal has weakened, just as Geo and his disciples burst through the door. Gar grabs Yoko, leaps onto a wyvern dragon waiting outside, and flies into the night, declaring he will question her at his ninja fortress instead. In the throne room, the ministers spiral into panic. No one present can break the seal except Yoko, and Yoko is gone. Princess Sheila stands up. She says she will do it herself. The king objects. She says she has studied white magic and is prepared to pay any price. She walks to Lucian, recites the spell in the name of Enomata, and kisses him. Dark Schneider erupts back into the world in a flash of blue light, naked, disoriented, reaching for a woman who smells completely unfamiliar. When Geo and the ministers fall to their knees begging him to rescue Yoko and destroy the 4 heavenly kings, Schneider leans back and says he does not want to. Sheila loses her patience. She calls him ungrateful and heartless and tears into him with more precision than anyone expects. Schneider snaps. He grabs her and kisses her roughly right there in front of everyone. Sheila slaps him across the face so hard the sound echoes. She calls him a greedy bastard and tells him she is disappointed in him. Schneider storms out furious and embarrassed, and somehow that is the closest he has come to actually agreeing to go. He arrives at the Valley of Graves with Sheila and a company of knights at his side. Sheila insists on accompanying him. Schneider mocks the seriousness of everyone around him. She scolds him for being a coward because Yoko is in danger. Ninjas ambush them almost immediately from the tree line, but Schneider waves a hand and reduces them all to ash with a light bullet spell, barely glancing up. He then turns to Sheila and tells her to remove her armor and weapons because she is slowing everyone down. After a long hesitation, she obeys, left in only a thin inner layer of clothing. Inside the fortress, Gar has not been idle. He is psychologically tearing Yoko apart piece by piece, telling her about Schneider's past, the 400 years of conquest, the hundreds of women, the fact that one of the heavenly kings herself was once his lover. He wants her to feel the full absurdity of protecting someone like that. When words are not enough, he summons a slime creature and sends it toward her, a creature designed to dissolve clothing. And it advances while Yoko screams Schneider's name and Lucian's name into the empty dark. Schneider's group reaches the main gate. He ignores every suggestion Sheila makes and blows the gate apart with a massive explosion. Inside, a giant minotaur blocks the labyrinth. Schneider spots a ladder, shoves Sheila onto his back, orders the knights to stay behind as bait. He provokes their pride just enough that they agree to sacrifice themselves, and climbs. At the top, a flying one-eyed monster named Suzuki Dojaziman intercepts them. It reflects his first spell back at him, grazing his shoulder. He watches the pattern, notices the barrier weakens the instant it attacks, and times the next spell precisely. The creature dissolves. But something is wrong. Using that much magic has started draining him faster than usual. Sheila notices. She can see it in how he moves, and realizes he is far more worried about Yoko than he is willing to admit. He denies it without hesitation. Then he carries her on his shoulder again when she gets tired, because he is, apparently, that kind of person. They move through a room with a glowing red cursed sword mounted on the wall. Schneider recognizes it as a trap immediately. He is too slow. The wound from the reflected spell is already poisoned by the sword's aura, and he collapses. He grabs Sheila's hand and tells her, in a voice that leaves no room for argument, to suck the poison from his hip. Right now. She stares at him in absolute horror. He is clearly in pain. She kneels, her whole face burning, and obeys. And that is when the cursed fire demon Effortlessly explodes out of the sword, declaring he will destroy whoever disturbed his rest. Gar, watching through a surveillance spell in the prison chamber, explains to Yoko that Effortlessly is a fire spirit, and Schneider's strongest spell, Hellion, is itself fire. Using it would only make Effortlessly stronger. He predicts Schneider will lose. Schneider, swimming in a 1,000-degree sea of flames with his magic already compromised by poison, disagrees. He finds out Effortlessly is immune to ice when Sheila suggests it. He does not know ice magic anyway. That is Ku's specialty. Mocked by the fire spirit, he decides to use Hellion regardless. He creates a barrier of heart fire around Sheila, then releases the spell, and simultaneously, silently, begins chanting a second one underneath it. Effortlessly counters with his own Hellion. The two columns of fire slam into each other, and Schneider completes the second spell, Exodus. A forbidden attack that targets the core of a spirit directly. He pulls all of Effortlesly's heat into the equation and releases everything at once. The resulting explosion is measured in millions of degrees. Effortlessly, defeated for the first time in 3 centuries, retreats into the sword. The sword accepts Schneider as its new master. He picks it up, blasts through the wall, and comes face to face with Gar. Yoko is right there, bound, dress half dissolved, eyes red. Schneider looks at her, and the rage that comes out of him is not performed. Gar calmly assesses the situation. Schneider is exhausted, poisoned, and furious, all of which makes him dangerous and predictable at the same time. Gar orders his ninjas back. He draws the Murasama sword and declares he will finish this in 5 minutes. Schneider tries to chant. Gar launches the demon god sword slash, compressed air at impossible speed, and sends him skidding across the floor. They exchange attacks, Schneider bleeding, Gar measuring. Then Gar starts describing what he did to Yoko in the prison chamber, detail by detail. He knows exactly what he is doing. The words land like physical blows. Schneider's entire face changes. That fury is exactly what Gar was waiting for. He gathers everything into his ultimate technique, the true demon god sword, a supersonic strike that has never been countered. Schneider simultaneously collapses every last trace of his remaining magic into venom. The two spells meet in the center of the fortress, and the entire building comes apart around them. When the smoke clears, Gar is staring at the fact that Schneider blocked a supersonic slash with one hand. He reaches for his trump card and realizes his beloved dragon Lars has vanished. Sheila is holding it. She used a barrier to protect it during the battle. Gar looks at the small dragon, looks at the wreckage, and admits defeat. Yoko runs to Schneider and tells him he was incredible. He tries to hug her. She punches him and calls him a pervert. And then, loudly, clearly, in a voice that shocks everyone present, the dragon Lars speaks. Schneider stares at it. Soldiers arrive with a report. Metallicana is under attack. And Lars is already explaining what it knows about what is coming next. Gar arrives at Metallicana with 2,000 dark ninjas at his back, and immediately throws himself into the orc army that has been tearing through the outer walls. His soldiers move like shadows, shuriken flying, formations cutting through the enemy lines with precision that leaves the Metallicana knights standing there open-mouthed. Gar says nothing dramatic about why he came. He just mutters that he owes Schneider and has to clean this mess up. Meanwhile, Lucian and the dragon Lars are hopelessly lost in the forest. They wander until Lucian finds Yoko bathing under a waterfall. He shouts her name and runs to her. The escorting knights arrive shortly after, mortified. That evening at the campsite, Yoko sits beside the sleeping Lucian and explains things quietly to the knights. This boy is the legendary Dark Sorcerer. The dragon beside him is Lars. And the man Gar, perverted as he is not evil. The knights piece together something they had only half believed until now. 15 years ago, Prince Lars of Metallicana used a forbidden transformation spell to become a dragon so he could fight alongside Geo and bring Schneider down. The dragon that has been traveling with the group this whole time might be that very prince, reincarnated. In a dark castle far from the battlefield, a vampire lord named Diamon sits on his throne, being informed that 2 of his 3 demon commanders have already failed against Schneider. He is not particularly interested in their failure. What he is interested in is power, specifically the blood of virgin maidens, which he intends to harvest until he surpasses both Ni and Ku themselves. He has a subordinate named Jado bring him a group of girls he captured. He scans them carefully and discovers one of them is not a virgin. He looks at Jado. Jado stammers. Diamon drains him to dust on the spot. At the campsite, Yoko feels it before she sees it. A cold, demonic pressure settling over the forest. The werewolf comes out of the trees, smelling her, deciding she is a better meal than what he already had. The knights try to shield her and get swatted away. Lucian steps forward, but when he opens his mouth, it is Schneider's voice that comes out, deep and absolutely certain, telling the werewolf not to touch her. Yoko realizes immediately. Schneider has seized control of the boy's body from the inside, forcing his way through the seal using pure will. The werewolf looks at the child and laughs. Then Schneider uses venom from inside Lucian's small frame and burns the creature to the ground. He interrogates the charred werewolf and gets the name Diamon, a vampire plotting to overthrow Ku and Ni from the inside. The werewolf's master did not wait long. Diamon's forces descend on the campsite, capture Lucian and Yoko, and bring them to the castle. Lucian is locked in a cage. Yoko, Sha'ari, and Kaihorn are bound in chains before the throne. Diamon monologues at them about immortality, the supremacy of true vampires, and how their blood will make him unstoppable. Sha'ari and Kai launch a coordinated assault the moment he pauses, Sha with her charm spell, Kai with her demon sword technique. The explosion is enormous. Diamon steps out of it completely unmarked, his body stitching itself back together in seconds. He grabs Kai and begins drinking from her neck. Then Kai smiles. Diamon is in her illusion. The cage where Lucian is held glows with violent blue light, and the 2 personalities inside him begin fighting for control with enough force to shatter the bars. The explosion blasts everyone into a different location entirely. They reappear at Metallicana Castle, directly on top of Gar's ongoing battle with the orc army. In the chaos, Dark Schneider erupts into his adult form. He has broken the seal himself, no kiss required, through sheer fury. He tells Diamon that touching his girls was a mistake. He summons the demon prince Tanamor and hits Diamon with a lightning riot spell. Diamon blocks it without flinching and explains at length that vampires are immune to ice and lightning. He fires blood-draining beams from his eyes that sever Schneider's arm completely. His minions celebrate and start advancing toward the girls. Sha tries her charm spell. They are immune. Schneider laughs. He calls Diamon crude. Diamon goes berserk at the insult and fires his disintegration beams in every direction, personally annihilating his own minions by accident, while Schneider and the girls remain completely unharmed. Schneider explains the rules of battle while standing there with one arm reattaching itself. Ugly, muscular villains do not defeat handsome heroes. This is simply how it works. He catches one of Diamon's beams, absorbs it, and throws it back. The laser punches through Diamon's chest and the wall behind him, exposing him to morning sunlight. He dissolves into ash. Lars cheers the victory. Schneider calmly tells everyone it is not over. The ashes swirl and reform into an enormous bat. Schneider punches it out of the air and explains that vampires can regenerate from ashes after 2 days unless the ashes are completely scattered. He produces a cursed green beetle, the product of an ancient forbidden spell, and explains the terms. If Diamant obeys, the beetle stays green. If he betrays, it turns red, his body shatters, and he becomes a mindless creature permanently. The bat begs. Schneider turns him into a toad. Sha'ari runs to throw her arms around Schneider. Yoko steps in with her elbow. Schneider introduces Yoko as the woman who will bear his child. Yoko turns crimson and slaps him hard enough to leave a mark. The group transfers back to Metallicana, where Gar has nearly finished cleaning up the orc forces outside the walls. Deep in the dark altar, Ku and Abigail watch all of this through a crystal sphere. Ku speaks carefully. He acknowledges that Schneider is behaving in ways that do not match the man they once knew, sparing enemies, protecting strangers, making jokes where he used to make graves. Something about the 15 years inside Lucian has changed him. Abigail confirms this makes Schneider more dangerous, not less, and insists he must be destroyed. He then reveals what Ku has already placed on Ni, the accused curse. A spell backed by an ancient evil spirit that monitors her loyalty in real time. As long as Ni softens toward Schneider, the cursed nail on her finger advances, from green to purple to red. When it turns red, her body tears itself apart, and the only way she can lift the curse is to kill Schneider herself and rip out his living heart. For Schneider to save Ni, he would have to die. For Ni to live, she would have to kill him. Abigail arranged the situation so that love itself is the weapon. At the bridge approach to Metallicana, Gar and his wyvern dragon are finishing off the last of the orc army, when Arshis Ni lands in front of him on her griffin. She asks him calmly why he betrayed the 4 heavenly kings. Gar says Schneider's side is more fun. Ni stops being calm. She draws the Thunder God sword, a legendary demon blade of terrifying power, and overwhelms Gar's Sama in the first exchange. Gar uses an illusion to evade her Dragon Fang slash, removes his armor, splits into 7 bodies using the ring spell, and unleashes the true demon god slash simultaneously from every angle. Ni identifies the real body and blocks with the Thunder God sword. Gar's power shatters her blade anyway. He tells her he is sparing her because she matters to Schneider. She calls him a fool and charges at him with the broken hilt. They are still mid-collision when the bridge explodes between them. Dark Schneider is standing on a gargoyle on the far side, looking down at the destruction, asking them if they have any idea what they just did to the main gate. Yoko and Lars have just arrived on the walls. Schneider explains he was testing a spell. Gar shouts furiously from across the gap, promising revenge. Schneider turns to provoke Ni directly, mocking that she looks like an enemy today. Ni sees Yoko. She looks at Schneider, and 15 years of waiting and rage and grief all press up behind her eyes at once. Then Schneider teleports behind her without warning and puts his arms around her. Yoko's face does something complicated. Ni goes rigid. Schneider whispers in her ear, asks why his adopted daughter is acting like this, says he loves her, and touches a point on her neck that sends her straight into a memory neither of them meant to share. Gar watches from across the broken bridge, groaning from his wounds. Ni's eyes fill with tears. She whispers his name. Dar. In the dark shrine, Abigail watches the cursed nail shift from green toward purple and explains to Ku that it is progressing perfectly. Nee pulls herself back together. She calls him filthy, tells him his tricks will not work on her this time, and mounts her griffin. She promises Metallicana falls next time. Then she flies away. Inside the castle, Schneider drops into a chair in Gar's room, where Yoko is changing his bandages. He mocks the condition Gar is in. Gar warns him seriously not to underestimate Nee. She is significantly stronger than 15 years ago. In the dining hall, Yoko serves soup to the soldiers. She ladles Schneider a portion so small, it is basically a symbolic insult. He complains. She rounds on him and unleashes everything she has been holding in since she watched him embrace Nee, calling him a lecher, asking how he could touch another woman like that in front of everyone. He admits he has done it many times, and the soldiers around them laugh. He tries to justify himself and fails, then buries his face in her skirt and announces he can confirm by scent that she is still pure. She slaps him and walks away. That night, Gio and Sheila communicate through a crystal ball with a prophet who examines Schneider's seal from a distance. The prophet reports something impossible. The seal was created by the goddess of love herself. It cannot be undone by evil. Only someone with genuine love in their heart can persuade the goddess to release it. The fact that Schneider broke it through his own will while protecting others tells the prophet something very specific about who he has become. Then the crystal shows her something else. She goes pale. The image of Schneider, heart torn out of his chest, dead. Yoko processes this in Gar's room while changing his bandages. Gar explains the mechanics flatly. In high-level magic battles, when two sorcerers of the same type clash and their spells collide, the weaker one does not just lose. They explode. Yoko leaves quickly, not wanting Gar to see her face. She goes to Schneider's room and walks in on him with Princess Sheila pressed to the bed. Sheila, who had come to beg him to stop fighting Nee, and is now realizing that begging Schneider for anything usually ends like this. Yoko stands in the doorway and understands something she did not before. Sheila's feelings for him are not political or strategic. Outside during a storm that night, Nee performs her ritual alone. She calls the Thunder God sword to reincarnate and casts the Me-Death spell, a column of energy that tears the sky open and is visible from every tower in Metallicana. Schneider feels it from the castle walls. So do Yoko, Sheila, and Lars. Sheila grabs his arm and begs him not to fight. Yoko asks him quietly whether he really can fight someone who was like a daughter to him and who still loves him. Schneider ignores both of them, turns to Yoko, and asks to borrow 500 yen. She gives it to him, confused. He puts the coin in his pocket, tells them both to escape. He is the target and they are safest away from him, and walks toward the edge of the wall alone. Nee descends on her griffin and says she has come to take his life. He calls her an ungrateful child and says he will punish her. He casts the flight spell, and his raven armor assembles itself around him as he rises. She meets him in the air and immediately opens with a spell he has never seen before. Deaf Leopard. A colossal lightning sphere expands from her hands that does not just attack. It absorbs all surrounding magic and connects to a higher dimension, nullifying everything Schneider tries to cast. He reaches for every spell he knows. Nothing comes. He falls into the rubble. Gar watches from below and goes cold. Nee has forced the fight onto sword combat. Exactly the wrong terrain for a mage. She dives and unleashes the Dragon Spear Lightning Slash. The tip of her blade is 1 inch from Schneider's chest when the Efrite Flame Sword wrenches itself in front of the attack and blocks it on its own. Efrite announces it will protect its master. Nee recognizes it. Schneider curses the fire demon for interfering. Nee attacks Efrite directly. Her griffin lunges, and Schneider slices the griffin in half with Ephrait's blade, detonating it midair. He reappears from the wreckage, completely unharmed. He tells Ni something she did not know. Her Thunder God sword is guarded by a spirit called Nu, the Thunder Beast, who is Efreit's ancient rival. Efreit reappears behind Schneider, already wanting the fight. The two legendary spirits face each other. Nu erupts from the Thunder God sword. Gar realizes if these two spirits clash their full power, one or both will be destroyed. They clash. Inside the blinding white collision, Efreit tells Schneider that it is precisely his hesitation and his compassion that the world needs. Then Efreit and Nu annihilate each other simultaneously. The Thunder God's sword spins into the Deaf Leopard sphere and vanishes. Schneider screams. Ni reminds him they are still fighting. He is distracted for 1 second. Her fist connects with the side of his head hard enough that blood pours from his eyes as he goes down. She declares victory and says she has killed him. Yoko and Sheila scream from the walls. Gar explains quietly that the Deaf Leopard sphere destabilized the moment Efreit sacrificed itself, and Schneider's barrier has recovered. The bleeding from his eyes is serious. He rises anyway. He tells Ni she is no longer his daughter, that he will treat her as an enemy from this moment. Both of them cast their lightning spells simultaneously, the sky exploding between them. Gar can see they are perfectly matched. Then both reach for the same final spell at once. Exodus. The forbidden attack. If both spells hit each other directly, everything in the vicinity dies. Gar shouts for them to stop. In the last second, Schneider sees Yoko's face in his mind. Ni sees Schneider as she knew him years ago, young, carelessly happy, and she hesitates. That half-second of hesitation is enough. She releases Exodus first. Schneider releases it slightly behind. The white explosion swallows the entire area. When the light fades, Gar looks at where Schneider should be and sees nothing. Ni walks out of the rubble, calls Schneider a fool, and prepares to finish it. Then, from within the settling dust, Schneider appears. His body is wrapped in a golden aura, blood still drying at the corners of his eyes, posture straight. He announces he is still standing, and mocks everyone in sight as weaklings. Gar sees the effort it is costing him and understands. Schneider is performing. Every word is theater covering the fact that he barely has anything left. Ni walks toward him. She tells him calmly that he is spent and she will kill him now. Schneider laughs and says she cannot. Then he says he loves her. He says it again. She tells him to shut up and backs away from him, and begins summoning. The Gilbert spell. Millions of lightning spirits condensing out of the darkened heaven above Metallicana. Gar recognizes it as the most dangerous kind of magic, spirit summoning, which punishes the caster if their concentration wavers even slightly. Schneider does not flinch. He summons a fire spirit of his own, Tafila, the solar fire spirit. Gar can barely process what he is seeing. Only fire spirits can counter lightning spirits. Both armies of spirits collide in the sky above the castle in a battle of light that turns the night into something else entirely. Schneider rises into the middle of it and starts talking to Ni. Not taunting, talking. He tells her that the ideal world Ku promised her is a lie. That war and hatred are woven into the nature of humanity. That no amount of power changes that, and no god will fix it. And something about his voice, or the words themselves, breaks open a memory Ni has spent decades sealing shut. A dark-haired half-elf child, too strange-looking to be accepted by humans, too human-shaped to belong among fairies. A war that drove away her tribe. A field of corpses she crossed alone until a man with white hair found her and took her in. 100 years beside him, learning, growing, living, until she trusted him more than she trusted anything, until she loved him more than she wanted to admit. She calls out his name, just that, Dar. He flies to her side and pulls her into his arms. She screams and shoves him away with a bolt of lightning out of pure reflex, sending him spinning. And the moment he is gone from her grip, she realizes the cursed nail on her finger has gone from green to purple. Abigail is watching through his crystal sphere, deeply satisfied. On the battlefield below, the lightning spirits lose their target. Ni's concentration has fractured. The spirits turn on the nearest living things, Yoko and Sheila. Schneider sees it happening and throws himself in front of the attack with one word. He blocks it. Yoko and Sheila survive with minor injuries. The spirits now converge on their own master. Ni is hit and falls. Her nail flashes purple, nearly red. She understands she cannot kill him, and she knows what that means for her life. What she does not expect is for Schneider to come back to her in that moment absolutely furious. Not at her, but at whoever dared to touch Yoko, and throw everything he has left into the Halloween spell. She focuses everything she has left into her own lightning. Gar and Geo scream at both of them to stop. They release the spells simultaneously. Fire and lightning collide in a column of destruction. Gar watches and sees Schneider's power is fractionally greater. Ni is about to be destroyed. Inside the light, Ni closes her eyes. She thinks one word before she disappears. Dar. And Schneider, inside the blinding explosion, sees an image of Lucian, who tells him the truth he did not know. That Ni came here choosing death by his hand specifically because she loved him. That the accused curse would have killed her in agony. This way, at least, it would be him. Realizing what Abigail has done, Schneider erupts with a rage that has no name, redirects the entire explosion outward and away, and steps through the smoke. Ni is on her knees in the rubble, crying and waiting. Dark Schneider stands in front of her. She asks if he is in pain. He says, now he will set her free. She closes her eyes. He raises his hand and drives it into his own chest. His fingers close around his own heart. He pulls it out. Gar and Yoko scream from across the field. Schneider collapses. The heart in Ni's hands dissolves into light. The accused nail on her finger shatters. A blue beam erupts upward from the spot where they stand. Ni clutches his body and wails his name into the empty sky. By morning, Geo has confirmed what the prophet saw in the crystal. The prophecy has come true. Schneider is dead. Yoko collapses in the corridor of the castle, unable to hold herself up, and every memory she has of both Lucian and Schneider presses in on her at once. In the dark altar, Abigail laughs and holds up a sphere containing the seal he has claimed. He declares that the legend is over, that Schneider drowned himself in sentiment, and now there is nothing left to fear. Ku does not celebrate. He leaves for the kingdom of Widowsniki on the northern coast, arrives outside its walls with his subordinates, and casts Bisqua. An ice storm of absolute zero temperature sweeps across the entire kingdom in seconds. Every soldier, every mage, every wall, frozen solid. His subordinate reports the second seal acquired. In another kingdom, Abigail's undead army pours through burning streets, growing stronger with every corpse it creates. The palace falls. 3 seals taken. Only Metallicana and the 4th seal remains. Abigail orders his entire undead force to march. In Metallicana, Yoko sits beside Lucian's body. She whispers that they have to fight on their own now. She tells him he still owes her 500 yen. Then she bends down and kisses him, hoping against everything that the virgin's kiss still works. Nothing happens. She leaves without looking back. Lars approaches the body alone and speaks quietly. It has spent 15 years searching for someone capable of facing what is coming. It believed that person was Schneider. It believed wrong. Then, Lucian's body begins to glow. The light intensifies until the entire room goes white, and Dark Schneider is lying there, red-haired, alive, breathing, eyes moving behind closed lids. At the frost altar, Abigail reports to Ku that the first broken seal restored 30% of Anthrax's power. 3 seals return near full mobility. The 4th seal, the one hidden in Metallicana, controls the god's mind. Abigail has located it. The resurrection ritual begins. Outside the castle walls, a massive undead army advances under the command of a demon-armored warrior named Lynch. Gar and Nee stand at the top of the wall, assessing him. Lynch has been constructed from the corpses of 100 of the strongest warriors who ever lived, then armored with demon equipment granted directly by Abigail. Gar's demon god sword and Nee's supreme thunderstrike both slam into him simultaneously. He barely registers the impact. He swings his weapon and sends both of them airborne. A dwarf mage named Doshi stands above the battlefield, laughing, explaining that the demon armor absorbs dark energy directly from the awakening anthrax. It cannot be stopped by anything they have. Lynch lifts his weapon over knee. Gar is already throwing himself in the way, declaring he cannot let a woman this beautiful die pointlessly, and taking the full strike. He goes down hard. Lynch turns to finish knee, then finish Gar, and the resurrection chamber below the castle fills with desperate golden light. Yoko performs compressions on Schneider's chest. She presses her lips to his. The explosion of light that results blows open the room's door. Dark Schneider sits up, grabs Yoko, lifts her off her feet, and announces he will be skipping school today. She stares at him for exactly 1 second, embarrassed and furious and trying not to cry, and then hits him on the head so hard he yells. On the walls, the undead army is 40 seconds from breaching the gate. Doshi is still monologuing when a voice comes from directly behind him. "You are the one who must die." Doshi turns. Dark Schneider's fist connects with his face and sends him airborne. Schneider faces Lynch. He does not cast a spell. He dodges every swing of that enormous weapon without apparent effort, raises one finger, says "exploder," and Lynch disintegrates in a column of fire that lights the morning sky. Schneider lands and barely breaks a sweat. Nee runs to him crying before she can stop herself. He gently touches her shoulder. Gar limps over and demands to know how he is alive. Schneider calls him a worrier and says he was fine. Gar calls him an idiot for pulling out his own heart, and they argue all the way back to the castle gates, where the surviving population of Metallicana lines the streets and cheers. That night at the victory banquet, Gar eats everything in reach, while Sheila approaches to personally thank him for protecting her. Meanwhile, Schneider slips away to a private room with Nee, who stops resisting and stops apologizing and simply admits that she loves him, and that she is sorry for everything she tried to do. He smiles and says he has always been willing to sacrifice his heart for her. At midnight, Yoko is tossing in her bed and cannot explain why a selfish, egotistical, impossible man keeps drifting through her thoughts. Then, her window opens. Dark Schneider, dressed in a full Santa Claus costume including the beard, climbs in through the frame and attempts to stuff a 500 yen coin into the stocking at the foot of her bed. She sits up. He freezes. She thinks it is Lucian for exactly 1 second, then recognizes those eyes. He removes the fake beard and explains he came to pay a debt. She tells him money has to be repaid with money. He completely misunderstands, assumes she means something else entirely, and lunges for the bed. She puts an elbow in his ribs. In the dark altar, Abigail receives confirmation. Schneider is alive. Lynch is gone. He roars and orders the next phase of the plan. The strongest of all undead kings, sealed in a hidden labyrinth for centuries, possessing magic power and near-perfect immortality. Kalsu listens calmly and remarks that Schneider has the devil's luck. In the ruined city near Metallicana, a cyclops creature named Vivin has already been prepared, implanted with actual tissue from the body of Anthrax himself. Doshi escorts it to the city streets, where it grabs a child and taunts the defenders. Schneider arrives and grabs Doshi by the head before the conversation is finished. He turns to Vivin, mocks its size, and fires the lightning cannon directly through its chest. The wound begins closing before the smoke has settled. Vivin transforms, the anthrax tissue rejecting the host body and reshaping it into something that no longer resembles the original creature. Tentacles. Regenerating tissue. A thing that gets stronger each time it is damaged. Gar and Ni arrive on the rooftops and watch without interfering. Schneider is provoked by the evolving form, rises into the air, and calls down Crash Magnum. Pillars of fire and earth erupting from the ground in every direction. Vivin pulls itself back together from what is left. Doshi explains the club. It draws power directly from the Earth's ley lines and concentrates it continuously. A full strike from it would level the entire city. Vivin winds up. Schneider watches the motion. He does not move. He lets the weapon swing through him, or what appears to be him, while the real Schneider appears 1,000 feet above the battlefield, with Doshi's head in his hand. He had moved into the air before the strike landed. He mocks Doshi for assuming the ground was the only place to fight. He looks at Vivin from above and sees the creature collapsing on itself. The anthrax tissue too powerful for any organic host, destroying the nervous system from within. Schneider declares he has won, and begins chanting a spell that takes longer than anything he has cast in this entire fight. Gar and Ni descend and hold the creature's attention while the incantation builds. Ni's Thunderstrike, Gar's Demon God Sword, both deflected. The syllables complete. Schneider calls 3 names. The Dark Sabbath, and unleashes black fire that consumes the creature in a closed superspace field, raising the temperature inside to hundreds of millions of degrees, and collapsing all regenerative ability at the molecular level. Vivin vanishes. Doshi is sucked into the black hole, screaming, and disintegrates. The spell leaves a perfect circular crater at the center of the city. Yoko runs toward it in horror and then hits Schneider for destroying the neighborhood. He tries to explain the physics. She hits him again. Abigail and Ku observe through the altar sphere. Abigail is delighted. This is exactly the data he needed. Schneider, supported by Gar and Ni, has exceeded all projections, which means it is time to release what has been waiting in the labyrinth. The shadow with glowing red eyes rises from the underground, in a village far from the castle. The elder there recognizes what he is seeing. This phenomenon, this rotting of the ground, the darkness that moves wrong. He saw it 50 years ago. He starts running. He does not make it. Inside the castle, Yoko is cleaning Schneider's ears while he rests his head in her lap. He complains constantly. She scolds him for being childish. He nuzzles deliberately further into her lap until she screams a warning that he is the only thing standing between this kingdom and destruction, which he immediately uses as leverage to demand she stop scolding him. Lars watches this and calls him a scoundrel. Yoko tells Lars to be quiet too, then sits there confused about why her face is warm. The darkness moving through the outer villages is named Lick Eddy, a near-immortal undead king with magic reserves deep enough to challenge the 4 heavenly kings. He is not subtle about his arrival. The village is gone before anyone in the castle knows he has reached it. Schneider intercepts him in the ruins of a church. Lick strides forward with the Satan ring, one of 3 legendary demon artifacts, pulsing on his hand. He summons chains of dark energy from the air and binds Schneider completely. Yoko watches in terror as Schneider cannot move. Lick explains that his master, Abigail, granted him this ring specifically to end Schneider's run of impossible victories.
Schneider tells him to shut up and begins chanting inside the binding. The chains tighten. His voice stays steady. He completes the spell, and the Satan ring physically leaps off Lick's hand, flies across the distance, and lands in Schneider's palm. Lick stares at his empty hand. Schneider smiles and explains that the ring chose him, a being of greater darkness, over its previous wielder. He closes his fist. The chains dissolve. Lick barely has time to register what happened before Schneider obliterates him. The entire watching crowd exhales. The Satan ring glows in Schneider's grip. Then the ring tears itself free and flies away. Everyone watches it arc through the air and disappear into the smoke, toward the castle. Abigail catches it in one hand. Yoko shouts across the courtyard that his plan has failed and he should give up. Abigail looks at the ring in his hand, then at the demon club already on his belt, then at the demon armor covering his body, and smiles. He now holds all 3 legendary demon artifacts simultaneously. He did not plan this. It is coincidence, and the coincidence delights him. Soldiers charge forward. Abigail's armor extends black tentacles and dismantles them all in under 3 seconds. Yoko screams at Lars to close the door. Abigail is already through it, throwing her to the ground, telling her to go find Princess Sheila on the top floor. He needs the final seal intact. Then Nee steps into the corridor. She says his name once. Lars recognizes the situation immediately. 2 of the 4 heavenly kings, facing each other in a castle hallway, and goes pale. Yoko starts to worry out loud. Nee tells her to step back or she will get hurt in the crossfire. Abigail mocks her for coming to settle a personal score, reminding her she voluntarily accepted the accused curse to prove her loyalty, and now has the nerve to act betrayed? Nee answers him in a flat, patient voice. She is not here out of hatred. She is not here for the past. She is here because she watched Schneider reach into his own chest to protect her. And after that, after standing in front of something that clear, everything else rearranged itself. The Schneider of 15 years ago is not the man she knows now. There is something inside him that was not there before. Something that came from Lucian. Something that looks a great deal like an actual human heart. And what drives her now is not ideology. It is love. Yoko stands nearby and feels the words land somewhere inside her, too. Abigail hears all of this and laughs until he stops being able to form sentences. He calls love the most ridiculous concept he has ever encountered. He says Ni is a waste of a perfectly good weapon. She tells him she is in a hurry and has no time for a failure like him, then concentrates every trace of lightning magic she has and begins chanting. The spell she calls is not one Abigail has seen her use before. She summons the Lightning Emperor, the absolute peak of her power, and unleashes it directly at him. The explosion that follows shakes the entire castle. High Priest Gio feels it through the walls and goes rigid. In the throne room, Sheila and the ministers stumble from the force of the blast. A soldier reports barely coherently that Abigail has entered the dungeons and is fighting Arsh's Ni. The ministers look at each other. Nightbond Joanna announces flatly that Ni cannot be trusted. She was an enemy yesterday and nothing guarantees she is an ally today. In the dungeon, Ni stands panting, with her arms bleeding from the effort of channeling the Lightning Emperor. Yoko and Lars stare at the size of the crater the spell produced. Abigail walks out of it, without a scratch on him. He explains calmly that his demon armor was designed specifically as a lightning rod. Every volt she threw at him was absorbed and stored. Without her lightning, he tells her, she is an ordinary woman. He advances. Ni grits her teeth and calls him an idiot for assuming he has seen the true power of the Lightning Emperor. She shifts from electricity to wind, linking herself to the elemental spirits of the air, and calls down the heavenly dragon gale. A tornado erupts in the dungeon, tearing stone from the walls and compressing it into rotating shrapnel. Lars explains that this vortex is stronger than anything Ni could produce 15 years ago. The kind of force that shreds human bodies and cuts through solid stone without slowing down. Abigail braces inside it, driving his armored tentacles into the walls and floor to anchor himself, screaming for her to stop and answer him. She shouts over the wind that he will die if he does not answer. The tornado tightens. Upstairs in the throne room, a soldier is mid-report when something cold lands on his head. He looks down. It is ramen. Schneider is standing in the doorway holding a bowl, looking at Bon Joanna with genuine contempt. He pours the rest over the knight's head and tells the elders not to forget whose hands are currently holding this kingdom together. Then he sits on the arm of the throne next to Princess Sheila and tells everyone to calm down. Gio thanks him and Gar formally for defending Metallicana. Schneider waves it off and says the kingdom will eventually be his anyway. He turns to Sheila, notices she keeps touching her necklace, and asks her to finally explain what she has been hiding. She hesitates. He tells her that women who trust men too easily are foolish, but women who refuse help from a handsome man when the world is ending are even more so. She understands what he means. Her hand falls away from the necklace. She begins to speak. Down in the dungeon, Abigail tears himself free from the tornado, injured, bleeding from between armor plates, eyes burning, and smiles. He says the wind was impressive. Then he says she has committed a grave offense by daring to wound him, which means this is no longer a conversation. He invokes the name of the destructive god Anthrax and declares punishment is coming. Ni does not flinch. She tells him Anthrax is the enemy. She tells him that whatever he promised the 4 heavenly kings about an ideal world without war, without discrimination, none of it was ever real. He just used them to resurrect a god that will destroy everything, including the people he claimed to be saving. She accuses him of the lie directly. Abigail tilts his head and asks her, with genuine curiosity, "So what if it's true?" Ni's face goes still. She says she is going to kill him. She reaches inward and calls the lightning beast New, which Abigail did not believe could possibly still exist after the battle with Ephraite, and New answers her. It transforms in her hands into the legendary Thunder God sword, Reborn. Abigail stares at it, horrified. In the throne room, Sheila explains the secret that the royal families of the Four Kingdoms have carried for generations. Their bloodlines were not chosen for politics or war. They were chosen because the four seals restraining Anthrax required living guardians, people whose existence was tied to the restraint of the Dark God. Every king on that continent was a lock on a cage. Then she touches her necklace and says the keepsake belonged to her late mother. It looks important. It is not what he is thinking. The true seal, she says, and her voice goes quiet, is not an object. It is inside her body, hidden inside her own living tissue. The room goes absolutely silent. Gio cannot process the sentence he just heard. The ministers cannot process it. Sheila stands in front of them all and says that yes, the fate of the world rests on whether she survives. And yes, the burden of that knowledge is more than she expected it to be when she was told. Schneider watches her. He sees the light that has always faintly surrounded her, a glow he noticed without naming, and understands now what it means. He remembers her kissing Lucian to free him when she had no reason to and every reason not to. He remembers her insisting on accompanying him into the Valley of Graves when she could have stayed safely in the castle. He remembers her embarrassment in the trapped room with the cursed sword, and the way she sat up straight afterward and kept moving. He tells himself he owes her nothing. He looks at her standing there trying not to cry under the weight of what she carries. He turns to her and says he will protect her. In the dungeon, Ni points the Thunder God sword at Abigail and asks him the question she came here to have answered. If he cannot control Anthrax, if the God's awakening destroys the Mage Kingdom and the ideal society along with everything else, then every promise he ever made was a lie from the first word. She asks him to tell her to her face whether that is true. Hidden in the shadows, Yoko holds still and listens. She realizes that if Anthrax cannot be controlled, the world does not survive its resurrection, regardless of who wins the battles in front of the castle. Abigail confirms it without hesitation. He is going to resurrect Anthrax. He calls Ni a foolish mortal. He says his God is not merciless, and that she is about to receive divine punishment. He activates all three artifacts simultaneously. The demon armor responds first, black tentacles erupting from every joint. The devil's mace begins drawing from the ley lines beneath the castle. The Satan ring ignites. All three dark relics resonate with each other in a frequency that shakes the dungeon walls, and Abigail begins chanting, a long incantation that pulls everything together. As the tentacles extend and wrap around the mace and the ring, and then around his own body, folding him inward, compressing and reshaping. He screams inside the process. When the transformation finishes, a colossal mechanical golem stands in the ruined dungeon where a man used to be. Abigail's face is pressed upside down inside the creature's chest, still visible through the dark material, his voice distorted and vast. He announces himself as Omega Abigail, Supreme Dark Magus. He says Ni is unworthy of hearing his true name. He says her punishment begins now. Yoko shouts for Ni to run. Ni grabs Yoko and Lars, flies upward through a section of collapsed wall, and relocates to the outer courtyard. Omega Abigail smashes through the castle wall behind them and lands in the open air. The ministers on the upper balcony look down at the things standing in the courtyard, and several of them take a step back from the railing. Bon Joanna explains quietly that the three demon relics are not tools.
They consume flesh and soul of anyone not made of darkness. Only a being fundamentally built of dark energy could wield all three without being destroyed by them first. Sheila says this is a death entity. Ni hits the golem with her lightning emperor sword. The blade sparks against the surface and does nothing. She realizes the thunder god's sword cannot even mark the armor. The golem swings at her. She dodges. She concentrates everything remaining in her body into the super ballistic lightning strike and releases it full power. The golem catches it with one hand. Ni looks at her own hands and wonders, for the first time in years, whether she has been wrong about everything. Whether a world built on Anthrax's power would even be a world worth having. Then she shouts for Abigail to die and charges. The golem grabs her. Abigail's voice fills the courtyard, asking if she knows who he really is, saying it is time for her to meet her end. His grip tightens around her body. Dark Schneider appears at the top of his own colossal dark golem. He arrived while Abigail was talking. He is standing on the head of a construct he summoned from the earth and shaped with dark magic, while everyone's attention was elsewhere. He asks Abigail what he thinks he is doing with his hands on his girl. Abigail freezes. Schneider taunts that the only way to fight poison is with more poison. Gar and the Knights on the Wall cannot believe what they are seeing. Ni warns Schneider that Abigail now wields both physical force and magical destruction together. Schneider says he heard her and lunges anyway. His golem's punch catches Omega Abigail in the chest and staggers him backward. Abigail roars. He knows exactly where his one weakness is. His exposed face pressed into the creature's chest, and the only person who has identified it is Schneider. He calls Schneider the most dangerous opponent he has faced and swears to crush him to dust. Abigail uses Ni as leverage. He tells Schneider to watch and tightens his grip on her as a threat. Schneider goes still on top of his golem. He can see that Ni is exhausted, barely conscious inside the creature's fist, and that another full compression would be fatal. He steps down from the golem's head. He kneels. He tells Abigail he gives up. He tells him that Ni matters more than his own life and asks him to let her go. Ni, held in the golem's grip 50 feet off the ground, begins crying. Abigail decides to keep her alive and make her his consort. The words are barely out of his mouth before Schneider is already in motion. He was never surrendering, and the expression on his face makes that obvious to everyone who has been watching him for more than 5 minutes. He flies straight into the golem's fist, wraps his arms around Ni, and pulls her out. He lands below with her in a princess carry, asking if she is all right. She tells him her armor absorbed most of it. She looks up at him and understands that their bond is something that exists at a level neither of them has a clean word for. Yoko watches from a distance and understands something at a different level. That for Ni, Schneider is not a father figure anymore and has not been for a very long time. Abigail screams that rescuing her mid-combat is cheating. Schneider, still holding Ni, tells him that in war, the one who defeats their opponent first is the winner. That is the only rule that has ever existed. From the wall, Bon Joanna lectures at full volume that true knights fight with honor, that winning through deception is shameful, that men must awaken to love and justice. Schneider tells him that when an enemy fights dirty, the correct response is to fight dirtier. That failure is worthless, and especially worthless if it means the women you were supposed to protect are dead. He sets Ni down and orders his golem to attack. The two giants crash into each other. Omega Abigail unleashes an energy strike that sends Schneider's construct flying, and Schneider himself skidding through the air. He lands bleeding, but already thinking. Ni tells him normal magic does nothing to that body. He confirms it. The armor was made with ancient world magic, the same source as Anthrax himself. Abigail calls him clever. He offers Schneider power and partnership. Schneider refuses without a pause. Abigail leaps to maximum height and drops straight down onto him, driving a shock wave of dark energy into the earth so large it throws debris across the entire courtyard. The ministers on the balcony grab the railing. Sheila and Yoko scream two different names. The dust settles. Schneider is standing in the crater, with blood running down his arm, asking Abigail if that was everything he had. He says the joke is over. He begins to fly. He starts chanting the Halloween spell, summoning the dark dukes and kings from below, and the air itself changes texture. Gar and Yoko recognize the shape of the spell. Ni shouts for him to stop, that Abigail is waiting for exactly this move, that the moment the spell completes, he will be exposed. Schneider does not stop. He summons the Oedipalian sphere, a massive dark field that engulfs Omega Abigail entirely, and from inside the sphere, countless dark entities pour out, gnawing at the demon armor, corroding it from every angle simultaneously. Schneider laughs. Gar realizes this is the only category of entity that can actually damage the dark relics. Infernal beings destroying infernal objects. It is working.
Then the Anthrax altar ignites.
The priests around Sheila feel it before they see it. The dark god is stirring. Sheila collapses, grabbing her own chest, screaming that her body feels like it is burning from the inside. Geo realizes immediately. The fourth seal is breaking under the pressure of Anthrax's awakening energy. The Oedipalian sphere detonates outward as the dark god's power surges through Abigail. Every dark entity inside it is obliterated. The golem stands completely unmarked. Schneider takes the backlash directly and crashes into the ground. Gar, Ni, and Yoko watch him lying there, and none of them can speak. Ni descends and concentrates the last of her power. She chants the spirit summon that links her to the wind elementals, the heavenly dragon Gale, building it larger than anything she produced in the dungeon. The tornado tears the outer wall in a new direction. Gar uses the demon god sword to channel the force. Both spells collide with Omega Abigail's form in a destructive pillar of light that shoots straight into the sky. When the light dies, Ni collapses into the rubble, completely empty. The smoke settles. The outer armor of the golem has been destroyed. What stands in its place is the creature's true form, a colossal mass of dark flesh covered wall to wall in anti-magic talismans carved in ancient runes. Abigail's voice comes from inside it, mocking them for thinking they could stop a god. Ni tells Gar what she sees. Every surface protected, every talisman rendering both weapons and spells useless. Nothing they have left can touch it.
Abigail looks down at Schneider lying in a pool of blood and says, "The legend ends today." That the Schneider who was worth fearing belonged to 15 years ago. The Schneider lying in the rubble in front of him is just a foolish man in love, and love has made him weak. The golem declares itself the harbinger of a new hell. In the castle, Sheila loses consciousness. In the spiritual space between life and death, she finds Schneider and pleads with him directly, tells him he is the only one who can stop this. She begs him not to go. Schneider hears her from wherever he is. He begins to move. His body flares with dark aura. The wounds on his surface begin pulling closed. He gets to his feet. Ni sees it happening, and something breaks open in her memory. A moment when he asked her to run away with him,
when he admitted aloud that he loved her, and she understood for the first time what it cost him to say that and mean it. Abigail says Schneider has already lost his dark nature. He has contaminated himself with love and mercy and attachment. A man like that cannot defeat the embodiment of absolute evil. He orders Schneider to disappear. Yoko runs forward. She spreads her arms and makes a promise out loud. Her first offering. Anything he wants, everything she has been holding back, if he wins. She tells him not to lose. Schneider looks at her. The red energy that begins building around him is not performing. He says good and evil mean nothing to him. He says he only cares about killing Abigail. He tells his enemy to die. He begins chanting. Gar recognizes the incantation. He shouts that magic is useless, that Abigail just proved nothing penetrates that body. Abigail agrees and calls Schneider a fool. He orders the golem to fire its destructive lightning beam at full power. Schneider does not dodge. He chants the Exodus spell directly into the oncoming beam and transforms himself into a blazing comet, accelerating through the lightning stream head-on. Inside the collision, with fire and lightning tearing apart everything around him, he tells Abigail that the golem's armor may be perfect, but the rest of the construction is not. He pierces through the golem's chest from the inside. The explosion goes outward in every direction. When the fire clears, Schneider is standing in the crater. His body begins dissolving into light. The black clouds overhead break apart, and sunlight pours through for the first time in days. Geo weeps. The people on the walls and balconies cheer until their voices go raw. On the battlefield, Gar and Ni stand in silence. They watch Schneider's light fade. Yoko walks toward him, and Ni breaks into a run, screaming his name, dropping to the ground beside him, begging him not to die and not to leave her alone. Yoko stands several feet behind her and remembers every single thing she has ever felt about both of them. Lucian crying in the church, and Schneider kissing her in the dark, and Lucian promising he would never transform again, and Schneider reaching into his own chest. All of it arriving at once. A hand lands on her shoulder. She turns. Schneider is standing directly behind her, eyes red, crying. He tells her the most devastating thing possible, that he missed his chance to be with her tonight after she made that promise, that he is heartbroken. Gar stares at him and asks if he is actually crying about that. Schneider wails that this is a tragedy. A rock falls from above and hits him in the head. Yoko, realizing she has been deceived again, shouts that he should have stayed dead. He transforms into a small dog and runs in a circle trying to apologize. Gar watches him and smiles. He knows something now that he could not have said out loud 3 days ago. The person who understands Schneider best, who has always understood him most, is Yoko. The ground splits open without warning. Black tentacles erupt from the earth and coil around Yoko, yanking her upward. Abigail rises from the rubble, smiling. He says Schneider is terrifying, and that he no longer has a path to victory. He lays out the situation without drama. Ni has several broken ribs and her magic is gone. Gar's internal organs are severely damaged from the battle with Lick Eddie. Both are standing through nothing but stubbornness. And Schneider's one true weakness is right there in Abigail's tentacles, screaming. His armor extends further and strips Yoko completely, suspending her in the air. Schneider's face becomes something wordless with fury. Abigail fires a red energy beam through his chest before that fury can become movement. He tells Gar not to move. He turns to the suspended Yoko and comments that her screaming is wonderful. Despite everything, Yoko shouts down at Schneider. She tells him not to worry about her.
She tells him Abigail has burned through almost everything he had controlling the artifacts and the golem. This moment, right now, is their only realistic window to defeat him. Fight, she keeps shouting. Lucian's name, Schneider's name. Both of them together.
Abigail observes this and says she is the only one on this battlefield who has clearly assessed the situation. He says the Schneider of the past would already be moving, but the Schneider of today has a human weakness. He asks what Schneider will choose, while Gar realizes the same thing. The current Schneider cannot abandon Yoko. He cannot leave her up there and fight. Abigail calls that love pathetic. He says it makes humans into objects. He orders her to keep screaming and writhing as a sacrifice to the destroyer god. He charges the red beam for a second shot. Two figures appear from nowhere and block it. Sha'ari's talisman spiders form a shield that takes the impact. Kaihorn lands beside her. Abigail stares at them. Sha'ari apologizes to Ni for arriving late and confirms she is here to protect her. Kai launches the Demon Strike 100 Sever without preamble. Abigail dodges. Ni calls out that the situation has changed. Abigail admits he has used most of his magic controlling the demon artifacts. But the armor itself contains cells from Anthrax's body and absorbs unlimited ambient energy. He activates the Satan Ring. The earth tears open across the entire outer courtyard, and skeletal zombies climb out of it in their hundreds, then their thousands. Lars and the soldiers in the castle look out and cannot see the end of the army. Abigail orders them to advance and kill everything living inside the walls. Everything except Princess Sheila. She is still needed. All 5 fighters charge into the dead at once. Gar with the demon god sword, Kai with the dragon spear, Ni with the lightning emperor sword strike, Sha with her talisman spiders tearing through the undead wherever they cluster. Bonjoana leads the royal knights in from the castle gate. Gar's ninjas pour through from the flanks. The outer courtyard becomes something beyond description. Abigail watches all of it with calm satisfaction and calls no reinforcements worth worrying about. He activates the super undead fusion. The Satan Ring flares. Every skeleton on the battlefield dissolves simultaneously into black liquid. The liquid rolls together into a single mass and rises, a colossal golem assembled from hundreds of fused skeletons and skulls, holding 2 swords the size of castle walls. It announces itself as the fusion of the valiant dead and declares it is stronger than any of them have yet faced. Gar and Ni coordinate immediately. Demon God Sword from one angle, Lightning Spirit Strike from the other, and the double attack connects directly. The golem absorbs both and keeps standing. Gar checks on Ni. She is running on empty. Abigail tells them it is his turn, and the golem raises one of its swords. Gar throws himself in front of me. Kai moves to cover Yoko. And in a quiet gray space between Schneider's consciousness and the void, Lucian's spirit appears. He looks at Schneider. He tells him he cannot die yet. He says there are things still here that need protecting. The kingdom, the seal inside Sheila, their injured friends, and the girl they both love. He reaches out his hand and asks Schneider to protect them all. Schneider turns away. He asks why he should care about the world or love. He says everything beautiful belongs to him anyway. Lucian looks at him sadly and says that Schneider is making him look like a fool. Schneider erupts. He shouts Abigail's name like it is a curse and rises on the battlefield. Sha'ari and Yoko see him standing and exhale. He looks at all of them. Yoko, Kai, Gar, Ni, every one of them at the edge of what they can survive, and tells them to step back. He is handling Abigail alone. He stands up slowly, his body catching fire from the inside out. Sha'ari watches and recognizes it. Fire spirits are condensing around him. Abigail stares and cannot understand where this energy is coming from. Then he looks at the sky behind Schneider and sees it, an illusion of the destroyer god Anthrax standing in the clouds. The dark god's awakening energy has been resonating with Schneider, the being most fundamentally connected to darkness on the entire battlefield, and that resonance has been feeding him throughout everything. Schneider's resurrection was not luck. Anthrax's own power called him back. Gar deduces the same thing and feels cold.
Abigail turns to face Schneider and the skeletal golem. He explains what he knows. 15 years ago, when Prince Lars defeated Schneider for the first time, Schneider used a forbidden reincarnation spell in the second before death. High Priest Geo intercepted the infant soul and sealed it into Lucian's body. But Lucian changed things. Lucian gave Schneider love. Lucian gave him a human heart. The Schneider standing here is no longer pure evil. And Abigail says it with genuine grief in his voice. The cruelest irony he has ever witnessed. A weapon made useless by kindness.
Schneider tells him to talk less. He smiles. He says this is the most ruthless plan he has ever executed. He steps toward the skeletal golem. It swings its sword. He catches the blade with one hand. The crowd above the walls falls silent. Sha'ari realizes he has deployed a defensive barrier of perfect calibration. Focused enough to stop a blade that size, precise enough to look effortless. Schneider taunts Abigail for sending a junior to challenge him and begins chanting the Halloween spell. Gar recognizes it immediately. Abigail orders the golem to block. The golem raises its sword. A streak of fire comes from the opposite direction and hits the golem's arm. Efreet. Roaring the word Helen as fire pours from the strike, Schneider completes his own chant, summons 7 keys, calls the gates of hell open, and shouts a single word. A blazing column of golden lightning slams directly into the golem from above. Gar and Ni cannot breathe. This is more power than Schneider displayed when he and Ni fought. The golem transforms its entire body into a skull-shaped shield, and the Halloween attack crashes against it. Abigail stands inside the shield, mocking through the fire. He says Schneider's regenerative capacity has grown even stronger, and asks what he plans to do next. Schneider roars the second spell, Exodus, both at once. Gar stares at the thing happening in front of him. 2 spells of that caliber being channeled simultaneously, one from each hand, and understands that what he is watching is not something that has a name in any magic compendium. Schneider becomes a fireball and charges forward. He pierces through the golem's shield and into its core. The explosion tears through the inner structure from the inside and detonates outward. When the sound finally dies, everyone on the walls and the balcony is still standing there, hands over their ears. Schneider lands. The golem is gone. The skeletal army that remains around Abigail dissolves under a single cast of tafila. Abigail tries to retreat. Schneider grabs him before he has taken 2 steps and delivers a barrage of punches to his face with both hands. Unhurried, methodical, each one landing exactly where he intends. Yoko, Ni, Gar, and Sha'ari stand watching and grinning. Every person still alive on the castle balcony erupts. Abigail reaches into the space he created when escaping the Omega Golem and pulls out the Satan Ring, still charged to 120% by the Destroyer God's ambient energy, and summons a horde of dark beasts from the charge. Schneider puts a blazing sword through his shoulder and pins him to the castle wall. Abigail screams. Schneider says he told him he would kill him.
While the cheering continues and Sheila reaches her hands together in thanks, Schneider's body begins to dissolve. The light bleeding out from between his fingers, from the edges of his silhouette. His magic is entirely gone. Gar and Ni see it immediately. Yoko and Shah Ari scream for Lucian. Yoko runs forward and catches him as he falls, begging him to open his eyes. Schneider smiles. He whispers that he loves her, and that both he and Lucian love Yoko. Then he closes his eyes. She holds him and screams into the open air, demanding he wake up, demanding he look at her, demanding something. Gar, Ni, and Sheila stand around the edges of the moment and cannot find words. Schneider opens one eye and asks if he has earned a reward now. The silence lasts exactly 1 second. Then everyone on the battlefield processes simultaneously that they have been completely played. Yoko pinches his cheek and pulls hard, telling him in a voice that is shaking between anger and laughter that she cannot decide whether she wants to kiss him or push him off a building. He grins. She admits out loud, to everyone present apparently, that he is the undefeated sorcerer. Abigail's voice comes from behind them. He is still alive. He is pulled free of the wall. His magic is spent, but he raises one hand, and a red energy sphere forms in his palm, pulsing with the last charge of the Satan ring. Schneider turns, and his body has nothing left. Abigail says if Yoko wants to stand beside Schneider when he dies, he will grant her that wish. Yoko moves before anyone else does. She crosses the distance between herself and Abigail in 3 steps, grabs him by the front of his armor, and throws herself backward, off the edge of the castle wall, taking him with her. Both of them plummet toward the sea. Every voice on the wall and balcony screams her name simultaneously. Abigail lands on a sharp rooftop below and is driven through it. His demon armor responds as if on instinct, black tentacles erupting from every joint, seizing him, and they do not stop. They wrap tighter. They tear at him from the inside. They peel back the armor and the flesh beneath it and reveal what has always been underneath. A colossal, monstrous form, made of ancient, dark flesh. The true body he has been containing inside a human-shaped shell. The sky overhead turns black. A massive explosion of light detonates from the spot where his transformation completes, reaching the castle walls, reaching the balcony, consuming Bon Joanna and the ministers standing there. Sheila screams. Ni reaches for Schneider. The light takes both of them. In the space between, Yoko drifts through something vast and dark and very quiet. Schneider appears beside her. He takes her in his arms. Lucian's face appears, smiling above them both. Outside, in the world of fire and rubble and ringing ears, a massive explosion reduces the Metallicana castle to something that has to be reported as fallen. At the Anthrax altar, Ku and his subordinates stand before the evil god's heart, while a subordinate delivers the report. Abigail is dead. Ku looks at the heart and says the evil god is going to sleep again, and wonders quietly what Schneider is dreaming about, displaced by the explosion somewhere near the border. A guard at a hidden samurai mansion sprints to the inner chambers and reports an intruder. 2 samurai run to the door and stop. A young woman is standing there, covered in blood from her hands to her shoulders, holding a boy in her arms. She looks at them with the face of someone who has nothing left to spend except the words she needs right now. Yoko begs them to save Lucian.